Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aman Bashir, and I am the Senior Education USA Advisor at the Lahore office. Thank you for joining us in today's session for applying to George Washington Graduate School. We have their representative with us today, Kate Kumar. Thank you for being with us. I'm just going to give you guys a brief introduction about USCFP and Education USA and the free services that we have to offer. USCFP is a binational commission, and we are in all three cities of Pakistan, that is Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. We have Education USA centers in all three cities. So if you have any friends or family members who would like to know about how to get to the US, how to study, how do you shortlist universities, and how would you be applying to different universities in the US, an advisor such as myself or 10 other advisors in all two other different cities would be more than happy to assist you guys in this task, be it undergrad or grad or PhD level. We'd be more than happy to assist you guys in this manner. And again, I just want to reiterate that all our services are free of cost and we charge absolutely nothing. If you need one-on-one sessions with us, whether you need GRE guidance, whether you need GRE assistance, or if you need access to books, we have a library here. You can have access to any of these resources absolutely free of cost. There you go, brief introduction about USCFP and Education USA. I'm just going to hand it over to Ms. Kate, and then you can take it over from here.
All right. Thank you so much, Aman, for setting this up for me. I am so excited to be here with you today. And thank you all so much for joining me and taking some time out of your day or evening. My name is Kate Kumar. I am an assistant director for graduate recruitment at the George Washington University. I specifically represent our programs in the arts and sciences, which we have over 90 programs, and I'll get into that a little bit in the next few slides. Today, I'm going to be telling you about how to apply to graduate school in the US and some general tips and best practices that you can apply. Now, because I work at the George Washington University, my perspective is going to be rooted in, coming from the perspective of GW, and a lot of what I'll reference will be specific to GW, but I've also made the presentation keeping in mind that, you're going to maybe be applying to several different schools in the US. So a lot of these tips and recommendations I'll give you, you can apply them to not just GW, but other schools in the US as well. So, I've tried to keep it general in some instances. But, most importantly, we do have an exclusive scholarship opportunity for citizens of Pakistan that I will be talking about in the second half of the presentation. So you'll definitely want to stick around for that. And that scholarship opportunity is just for our GW programs in arts and sciences. So definitely stay tuned for that. I will be taking questions at the end. If you type them in the Q&A box, so you'll see at the bottom toolbar where it says Q&A, that's where you can submit your questions. I will address them all at the end. I'll kind of read them aloud and address them. So as we go through the presentation and any questions pop in your head, feel free to just type them in. All right, and we'll go ahead and get started. I also have to briefly apologize for the lighting. It's kind of washing me out. I realize that it's coming from behind me, so I'm sorry if I look a little washed out from the lighting, but hopefully it's not too bad and you can still see me okay. Okay, so first I'm going to go over, who we are, what we do, what kinds of programs we offer. The next part, I'm going to talk about general tips and best practices for applying to graduate school. And then I'm going to be talking about that scholarship that I mentioned. Last, I'm going to be talking about some graduate school myths and misconceptions. So maybe some rumors or some things that you've heard about applying to grad school, which may or may not be true. And then I'll be taking Q&A. Okay, so like I mentioned, I'm representing the George Washington University. George Washington University itself is comprised of 10 different schools. So we do have a business school, we do have a school of engineering and applied sciences, which houses all of our engineering programs and computer science programs. We have a School of International Affairs, but I'm specifically representing our Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. So just kind of wanted to orient you a bit to the George Washington University. So George Washington University is a medium-sized private research university. We are located in the heart of Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the United States. If you're not familiar with the area, we are literally within walking distance of the White House and other organizations like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the Smithsonian Institution and the museums there, the State Department, so several different organizations such as that are located right within walking distance of campus. A little fun fact about GW is that we have more graduate students than undergraduate students. And then specifically within the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, which you'll see referenced as CCAS, we have about 3,000 students who are international, 30% are international students. So it's quite a significant chunk there. At CCAS, we have over 90 graduate programs, including graduate certificates, master's, PhDs, and PsyD. Now, I will mention that if you are an international student sitting on an F1 visa, generally you're only eligible to be studying for either a master's or a PhD. You wouldn't be eligible for a graduate certificate. So just keep that in mind throughout this presentation or when you're looking at programs. And that's likely applicable to other schools in the US. Often that F1 visa needs to be applied towards a master's degree at least. If you wanted to do a graduate certificate, normally you can, you just would first have to enroll in a master's program and then you can add on the certificate at a later time. I won't talk about our campuses too much because I think that's getting a little bit too detailed about GW, but of course, we offer classes full-time and or part-time to sort of accommodate students who want to work or have an internship during the day and then take classes in the evening. And that's something that's pretty common throughout the US is that you'll find that a lot of graduate courses will take place that evening just to accommodate those students who might want to work during the day. All right, so like I said, we have over 90 programs. I won't go into all of them, but maybe you can research those on your own time. I'm sure with over 90 programs, there'll be something that might pique your curiosity a bit. But these are the 7 fields that sort of encompass those 90 programs. We do have a lot of STEM designated programs like data science is booming right now, biological sciences, chemistry, physics, mathematics, statistics, applied economics is really also booming too. So those are just a few programs to list off. I wanted to see if okay, just wanted to mention one thing about the term when I say STEM designated. What it means is that if you enroll in a program that is STEM designated, that means that should you take on optional practical training after you graduate, otherwise known as OPT, that means that instead of only being able to work in the US for 1 year, you actually get to work in the US for 3 full years. So normally, you know, when you enroll in a master's program, if it's not STEM designated, you'd at least get to remain in the US for an additional 1 year after you graduate. STEM designated means you get to stay on for 3 years. So that's just something important to remember. And then when you're looking up our programs, they'll always mention if it's STEM designated or not. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of GW and, you know, my school that I represent, CCAS. Now I just want to get into some nuts and bolts about tips and best practices for applying to graduate school in the US. Okay, so you might be at the stage right now where you are doing your research, which, you know, congratulations, that's probably the most important phase, actually. You want to allow yourself plenty of time to do research first. The first question you want to ask is which program or which programs. So graduate schools can be extremely diverse from one school to the next. And not only that, but the programs can also be extremely diverse from one program to the next, even though they might be similarly titled or they might look very similar. So for instance, at GW, we have 3 different programs which are very similar. We have data science in CCAS, we have data analytics in our School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and we have business analytics in our business school. So what you really need to do is go to the program's website for each program and look course by course at the curriculum that's laid out. Look at the kinds of projects that you might be undertaking. You know, is there like a capstone project? Is there a thesis requirement that you might be interested in? Definitely look at the faculty members and their profile to see if there's any faculty who's doing any research that might be of interest to you. And then, yeah, how many programs do you want to apply to? You know, you can apply to multiple programs, even within the same school. So, you know, we definitely encourage you to apply to a few different programs in different schools just to increase your chances of getting in. But just keep in mind that each program is going to come with an application fee, of course. So, you know, it could get a little bit costly depending on how many programs you want to apply to. That's number one. You want to consider which program or programs. So they're all a little bit different, even if they are the same name. Number 2, you want to ask yourself, what are the requirements? So you will quickly learn that program requirements will vary from program to program, even within the same school. So, you know, generally you'll have some of the same application components, like, you know, you'll have to submit an online application form and you'll have to submit your resume and transcripts. But otherwise they could vary depending on, you know, do you have to submit your GRE scores? Do you have to submit a writing sample? You know, what kinds of questions does the statement of purpose ask? So you'll really want to pay attention to what are the exact requirements of the program you're applying to. Number 3, so when is the application deadline? So you'll see different deadlines, again, depending on the program. The most PhD program deadlines will fall earlier than our master's programs. And again, this is, you know, across the United States, not just GW. So most PhD program deadlines will fall in early December or early January. Whereas most master's program deadlines will come a little bit later, and you'll usually see 2 deadlines for master's programs. So there's going to be the first deadline, which is usually in early February. For us, it's February 1st. That is what we consider or call the priority funding deadline. And that is a very important term for you to learn. So priority funding deadline means that is a deadline by which, if you get in your completed application, you'll be considered for funding automatically. So that's always a deadline I encourage you to submit for. It's going to be the earlier one, usually in February. And then you'll see a final deadline, which is normally going to be around April, May. For GW, it's April 1st, typically. But again, that's you'll only be considered if there's leftover funding, so you don't get first consideration. So that's just the biggest tip I can give you with the deadlines. Otherwise, you know, the other tip there is that there's different deadlines for programs and, you know, with different schools as well. So just, you know, write them down every time you're interested in a program, make note of it. Okay, number 4 is what are the funding options and processes? It might look a little bit different for each school, but generally, you know, that is something that actually goes hand in hand when you are submitting your application to grad school. You also want to be, you know, submitting, you know, your funding. If it's a different application, you want to be doing this at the same time is kind of what I'm getting at. So for many schools, including GW, submitting your application to the program is also going to get you automatically considered for some funding options within the school. So that is an automatic thing where it happens simultaneously. That's what I was mentioning about that February 1st deadline. But there could be other alternative funding opportunities outside of just like the college giving you funding. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you're taking care of managing those applications as well at the same time. But again, really the main tip there is that deadline, the priority deadline, is really why you want to submit your application early. Okay, so the number one tip, of course, that I can give you is allow plenty of time. So whenever you see a deadline posted, that doesn't mean just the deadline by which to submit your application. It means the deadline by which your application is not only submitted, but also completed. So generally, you are allowed to submit your application before your letters of recommendation have come in, before your GRE scores or your TOEFL scores have come in. And in fact, I encourage you to submit your application even before those things have come in. Definitely don't wait, because the admissions office will be in charge of sort of collecting your GRE scores and attaching them to your application, and same for your letters of recommendation. So do not wait until the very last minute. We encourage you to submit your application at least 2 weeks before the deadline. And that way, if there's anything that's maybe wrong with your application that our admissions team spots, like maybe the transcript is ineligible, or even maybe if you found that you made a mistake in your resume, your statement of purpose, and you want us to replace those items, then we have plenty of time to troubleshoot and to resolve those issues with you. And that's really the next point, which is saying submitting early if possible. It's better for you and it's better for us. Keep in mind that admissions offices, they could be processing thousands of applications, right, and responding to thousands of emails about applicants' applications. So, if admissions offices really would love to help you and would love to help make sure that your application is complete, but you will need to be sensitive to the timeline, and you will need to give us plenty of notification and just allow time for us to help you complete your application. The last bullet point mentions monitor recommendations and official test scores. So your letters of recommendation and your test scores are the most at risk for late arrival. I've seen this time and time again, where people have submitted an application and it never gets sent to the department for review because they don't have their test scores or letters of recommendation. That's another good thing to note, is when you submit your application, generally it's processed by an admissions team first, making sure that the application is complete before we even send it to the committee for review. So if your application is not complete, if it's missing test scores or letters of recommendation, it won't even get sent for review usually. So with your GRE scores, those generally take about 2 to 3 weeks to be sent electronically. So we definitely recommend you to take that at least a month in advance at the very least. So there's plenty of time for those scores to arrive, and we do need those to be official, and that's most schools in the US require that. Your letters of recommendation, you can be, think about how if you're asking a professor to write your recommendation, they could be having, 20 other students asking them the same thing. So definitely give them advance notification that you want them to write a letter of recommendation, and stay in touch with them. They're the ones actually uploading the letter to the portal. So once you designate them as your reference, it's a little bit out of your hands for that letter to actually get uploaded. So, make sure that you touch base with them and remind them to submit their letter in a nice way. All right. So these are some of the standard application requirements. that you'll find some version of for every school, every program that you might apply to in the United States. So, number one is that you'll usually have an application form that you'll fill out, which is just basic, biographical information. It's all online now. I don't think any school is having a paper application, not that I know of. You'll need to upload your resume or CV, your statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, transcripts from all institutions you've attended, and then the last four components are if applicable. So these are some things that you could see depending on the program. The last bullet point says application fee, because I wanted to let you know, at least for GW, if you're attending this webinar, you can get that waived just by entering that you attended the webinar, and I'll send you a code as well in the chat after the presentation. So I'll send you an application fee waiver code. So at least for GW, for a CCAS program, you can get your $80 application fee waived. And I definitely recommend you to always be looking out for opportunities where you can get your application fee waived. It's often just as easy as, attending a webinar like this, just for, another school. So I definitely recommend you to keep an eye out for that. Okay, so again, the application form is usually 100% online. These are just some tips that we've really found from from the interface of our application portal. So I won't really go into detail about it, but if you'd like me to share the slides with you after the presentation, I'm more than happy to do so. Just send me an email. Okay, your resume or your CV. So you should normally place your academic history first, meaning your education, any published papers or peer-reviewed papers that you've done. That should normally go first. This next bullet point was actually a tip that we heard from the faculty who review applications. And what they say is try to avoid using acronyms or abbreviations. So when in doubt, spell it out, because what might mean something to you might mean something totally different to us, and we might have no clue, what organization or what you're referring to. So just always spell it out. The resume should have a clean layout, and what you can do is just download a resume template from online and just fill in the content from there. You should include all experience, whether it's like mentoring or tutoring or volunteering or any teaching experience you might have, especially if you're hoping to get some sort of assistantship, like teaching assistantship or research assistantship. You'll definitely want to highlight any kind of relevant experience you've had there. Your resume can be longer than 1 page, but it shouldn't be like 5 pages long. I know that might be a misconception, that maybe you've heard that the resume has to be only 1 page, but that's not true. And then the last bullet point is really just a recommendation to get a mentor, get someone, an advisor to review your resume. If even just for simple, spelling or grammatical errors, that can be really helpful. This is being put on by EdUSA, so I can say get an EdUSA advisor to help you review your resume. All right, statement of purpose. So first and foremost, well, this is generally a short essay that you write, which specifies, kind of why do you want to come to this particular school to study this program, and what do you think you can add to the program, and what will you plan to do with the degree once you graduate. But first and foremost, you'll definitely want to make sure that you read the specifications of the statement of purpose to see if there's any questions that you'll need to address specifically. And then normally, it's going to be around 500 words. Now, no one is ever strictly counting the number of words, so it can be plus or minus, I would say about 15% of 500 words. But yeah, it's really not a strict word count there, or maximum word cutoff. And then number 3 is just saying that you should customize your statement of purpose and tailor it as much as possible to the school and to the program. You'll definitely, we're aware that you're probably applying to multiple schools, so you'll want to change the name of the school in each statement of purpose. That's a common error where we'll see that someone addresses their statement of purpose as Georgetown University, but we're George Washington University, so it's a common mistake that happens. Not only though the name, but again, you'll want to make references to the specific program. You can even highlight, any faculty members that you might have caught your eye and mention them in your statement of purpose, that you're keen to work with them and you're interested in their research. So, I mean, really, this tip can be applied to any component of your application. Customization is going to be super important. Though I guess you can't really customize your transcripts or your GRE scores, those are more objective. So when you can, you should try to tailor as much as you possibly can. Just be very specific. Okay, your letters of recommendation. So remember that these are really at risk for late arrival. So you really want to plan ahead. How many are required and what type? So normally it's going to be 2 or 3 letters of recommendation are required. You can generally include more letters of recommendation if you like. And then, give your recommenders a big heads up. So you should really notify them several months in advance of when you want their letters, just because it really is out of your hands. It's up to them to actually submit the letter. It's not valid if you have a letter of recommendation and you submit it. It always has to come directly from your reference. Select the strongest possible recommenders and pick someone who knows you well and can speak to your potential, your capability to succeed in the program. So generally we recommend academic references over professional references, just because they're the ones who really can speak to your abilities to succeed in an academic program. We, prefer you to pick people who know you better rather than thinking, more about their title. The title really doesn't matter as much as just how well they can attest to you and your capabilities. Ideally, choose someone in the same field as your target program, but it's okay if you're sort of switching academic paths too, but definitely let them know that you're switching academic paths. And also, give your recommenders things like your resume, send them your transcript, send them a paper that you've written in their class, just so that they can have those materials and better write you a good letter of recommendation. So help them out a little bit. And then this last point, since professional recommendations should be from supervisors, not from peers, ideally. All right. Okay, and then for transcripts, I know it says CCAS requires, but again, generally every school in the US will require transcripts from all institutions that you've attended, whether or not credit was earned. And what I will say too is that I know you might be asking, what about how do you convert, your transcript from Pakistan to the American GPA scale? Well, don't worry about that. Our admissions team is trained in doing that GPA calculation and conversion. But what I will say is if there is a legend on your transcript that shows the conversion, definitely include that. When you submit your application for the program, we only need unofficial transcripts at that time. So unofficial is fine. We'll need your official final transcripts once you're admitted to the program. So there's a little distinction there. What I recommend you to do is, I still recommend you to obtain an official copy of your transcript, but then scan it as a PDF, because that's just going to be the most legible, the most acceptable copy that, just in our experience, we found we prefer that. The last bullet point mentions, if you are still completing your coursework as you're applying to graduate school, we would still like to see the courses in progress on your transcripts. So even if they don't have the grades, we'd still like to see that in progress coursework. official test score. So many of our programs in the US will require something like the GRE or maybe the GMAT if you are applying to business school. And then, of course, we'll need proof of English language proficiency. I know that we accept TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, and PTE. Most schools definitely accept TOEFL or IELTS. So one thing I wanted to note is that many programs and many schools in the US are moving away from the GRE. So that goes back to that point of check the program requirements for the specific programs you're requiring or you're applying to, because it might not require the GRE. And so you might not need to waste your time studying for the GRE. For instance, I know our program data science does not require the GRE, which you might find surprising, but they haven't required it for some time now. And let's see, so like I said, it does take official scores to arrive at least 2 to 3 weeks to arrive. So schedule your exam for at least one month before the deadline. If not earlier, I would recommend. Let's see. And then, yeah, all official scores are sent electronically. I've listed the institution code for GW, which is 5246, but of course we want to note what is the institution code for whatever schools you're applying to. And then the last bullet point mentions that, scores do expire, unfortunately. So the GRE score is valid for 5 years and the English language scores are valid only for 2 years. Your writing sample is an excerpt that is pulled from your academic writing that you've completed previously, such as an undergraduate in your undergraduate studies. So it's normally about 5 to 10 pages. It's something that, because you've already done this, you really shouldn't need to be writing this while you're applying. It's just something that you should pull from something you've already written. That's really all I'll say about that. I know a lot of PhD programs do require a writing sample, but some masters do as well. Portfolio, these are really for our arts programs, whether it's at GW or beyond. You'll usually have to submit a portfolio, showcasing your artwork. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about too is sort of the etiquette about contacting faculty and admission offices. So you're definitely welcome to reach out to us throughout the application process, whether it's the admissions team or even, faculty directly. If a faculty member has their email address, contact information posted on their website, then feel free to contact and reach out to them. That's what it's there for, right? So, we just ask that when you do reach out, you should, provide your full name as it appears on your either your passport or your application if you've already started one. And of course, provide the name of the program that you're applying to, and then clearly state your questions or request. Again, be as specific as possible. The last point is super important because we often get several email requests from prospective students who have emailed us, and in their email, they're asking, hello, would I qualify or would I be admitted if I applied to this program? So they've not even started their application, but they're sort of requesting to be pre-screened. And, they've attached their resume and, maybe their transcript or whatnot, but generally really no US school will respond to that email, or they'll say you'll just need to apply. Maybe they'll give some general advice, but we really don't provide that kind of pre-screening option. The only way that you'll know if you're going to be admitted is if you submit your application, your completed application. So I would say, and it kind of rubs people the wrong way if you just send a long email, with all of your application components posted. So I would say it doesn't, what am I trying to say? It just rubs people the wrong way a little bit when we get this request. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, and the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm sure, is the scholarship for citizens of Pakistan. And before I talk about it, I want to disclaim that the scholarship is not only specific to GW, but it is specific to Columbian College of Arts and Sciences programs, master's programs. So it is super specific to the programs that I represent. But definitely, research other scholarship opportunities that might be available if you're not interested in some of our programs. But you should be, because we have over 90 programs, so there might be something you're interested in. All right, so the scholarship is called the Global Leaders Fellowship. We've had this for probably 5 or 6 years now. So maybe you've even heard of it, who knows? So with this scholarship, you at least get an application fee waiver automatically. So I guess that means that, yeah, whether you get the application fee waiver from the webinar or the Global Leaders, you don't even need the application fee waiver code from this webinar, now that I'm thinking about it. But anyways, so apart from the application fee waiver, you can also have a tuition award of up to $10,000 per academic year. So for year one, you would get the $10,000 towards your tuition. And then for year two, you would also get that same amount. So to be eligible for this award, you simply must be a citizen of Pakistan, studying on an F1 visa, which is the most common student visa type. And then you must be admitted to and enroll in one of our CCAS master's programs, which I posted the link there. And then you must complete your application, submit and complete your application by February 1. So at this point in time, it's a little bit too late in the game to be considered for fall 2022, which starts in August. But I think it's the perfect time if you're just starting to think about graduate school. It's really, it's May, it's really the perfect time to start thinking about fall 2023. So if you're looking to enroll in fall 2023, your application would be due this next February to be considered for this award. And then I have posted a link to the award page there. Okay, so the only other thing that you need to do to be considered for this is on the online application form, there's a question that asks, do you want to be considered for school-based fellowship, merit-based scholarship, or teaching assistantship if available for your program? And just click yes. That's all you need to do. There's really usually not a reason for you for anyone to select no, unless they're going to be fully funded by some outside entity, which is pretty rare. So that's all you need to do, just click yes. So that's it. There's no separate application process. It's just get your completed application in by the funding deadline of February 1. And then from there, it is merit based. So, it's we are pretty generous with giving out the award. I would say probably over 50% of applicants get some form of the award. But it is just based on the strength of your application compared to, the other applicants at that time. So then I just wanted to talk a little bit about graduate tuition and the structure of what that looks like. So graduate tuition is charged per credit hour. And then the rates do vary by program and location. And I think I'm speaking a little bit more to GW. I'm not as sure about how graduate tuition is structured at other US schools. It could be similar, but for instance, I know that undergraduate tuition is structured differently. It's usually just a flat rate charged yearly. So you'll want to double check the tuition structure if you're applying to a different school, but this is how it is for GW. So I've linked the specific rates that can be found there. And actually, I'll just give you an example of what the tuition looks like for CCAS programs. So typically the program is billed at $18.25 per credit hour. So if you're doing data science, for instance, you would just multiply the total number of credit hours, which is 30, by $18.25 to give you an idea of the full cost of the program. So that's how you would calculate that. It's generally around $55 thousand or so. And that's just for tuition. Of course, when you're doing your calculating, how much it's going to cost you total to go on this endeavor, you're going to want to calculate, living expenses like rent and books and supplies and that sort of thing. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was just a few graduate school myths that you might have heard that might not necessarily be true. So the first myth says you shouldn't apply to graduate school right after undergrad or vice versa. So the truth is we get applicants with a wide variety of backgrounds. So some might be applying straight from their undergraduate, and some might have been working in the field for several years, and now they're applying, after being out for 5 or 10 years or so. So either one is really fine. I would say that if you're interested in a business school, you will actually want to check they usually have a work requirement. So typically you will have to have worked for 2 or 5 years or so in order to be considered eligible. But generally we get applicants at all different stages in their life. All right, the next bullet point says, you shouldn't, is this the same one? You shouldn't wait too long after undergrad to apply to graduate school. Okay, yeah, so that kind of goes in line with the first one. And then, really only when is the right time in your life to apply to graduate school. The only kind of one caveat is I know it can be difficult if you've been out for a while to kind of touch base with your references, because if you've been out of school for 10 years, then it can be a little bit difficult to get academic references. And in that case, if you have to get a professional reference, that could be fine. It's just, again, provide your professional reference then with your transcripts, with your, paper that you've written, just to help them write, the best letter of recommendation that they can for you. Let's see, the third myth says the application deadline is the date when I should submit. So by now, probably the difference between submit and complete, right? So the deadline is actually the date by which your application should be submitted and completed, not just submitted. The next myth says graduate school is too expensive. So that one is not a myth. That one is true. It's a fact that graduate school is very expensive. It is an investment in your future. But that's why, I'm excited to be here with you today to at least tell you about the scholarship opportunity that I just mentioned, our Global Leaders Fellowship, which ends up being about a 30% discount, or, so it's pretty significant. So that's why you have to really do your research well ahead of time of, how you're going to fund your studies too. And then the next one says decisions are based on a single item in your application. So all U.S. graduate schools really undertake a holistic application review process. And that means that each application component is considered important. So if you have a bad grade or two, it's not going to rule you out automatically from consideration. But on the other hand, just having good grades alone isn't necessarily going to be enough to say that you're the right fit for the program. So you really should focus on things that you can change in the moment when you're applying, or that you can, like, for instance, your transcripts and GRE scores, those are what they're going to be, right? But you can really work on, finding the best references possible, and you can really work on writing a really strong statement of purpose. Okay, and then the next myth says applicants who contact faculty directly have a greater chance of being admitted. So with this one, I would say, for PhD programs, you'll often have to designate a faculty member who you want to be your mentor, your advisor. But generally for our master's programs, you really don't need to reach out to faculty before you apply. Of course, like I said, in your statement of purpose, you could mention specific faculty members that you're eager to work with, but it's not required. And certainly you can if you have questions or if you just want to introduce yourself. But what might be a better starting point is if you send your questions first to the central admissions office, and the admissions office can then help decide the route that your email takes, whether the admissions office answers your email, or then they might direct you to the faculty member or to the department further. So that one really is not necessarily true. Okay, and then the last one says a recommender's title is more important than his or her knowledge of an applicant's academic strengths and professional skills. So that one is definitely a misconception. I know some students think like, oh, I'm going to get a letter of reference from the vice chancellor or something, who might not even know the student really. But really what we're looking for is a professor who knows you and can speak to your capability to succeed in that program. And just to wrap up, I've listed some helpful links and contacts. Again, I can share these slides with you after the presentation if you just email me, which I've listed my email there, gradccas@gwu.edu. And at this time, I can take any questions you might have. So maybe I'll keep it on this slide, just so you have the links there. So again, just feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A box. I prefer that over the chat. So yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. And even if you don't have questions right now, if you think of them later, you can always email them to me for sure. While you post your questions, I'm gonna take some water. Hope everyone is enjoying their week and that it's not too hot there. So one question asks, other than the Global Leadership Scholarship, can we get teaching assistantship? That's a mouthful, a teaching assistantship or some other scholarship. So yes, so other than the Global Leaders Scholarship, you would also be considered at that time for any kind of assistantships that might be available, but that is all managed by the department. So it really just depends on if they have openings for assistantships in the departments. And then it's a little bit more limited at the master's level. I would say that assistantships are more common for our PhD students to get, but it's definitely, we've seen master's students get assistantships, definitely. One thing I wanted to mention as well is if you really are keen to get some sort of assistantship, you should aim for your TOEFL to be closer to 100. So our minimum requirement for TOEFL is usually 80 for master's programs, but we really like to see closer to 100 to be considered for assistantships. And for IELTS, the minimum is usually 6 overall. We like to see that being closer to 7 to be considered for an assistantship. And then for some other scholarship, as you mentioned in your question, some departments have their own scholarship fund that they might give out separately. The scholarship that I'm talking about is just coming directly from the school at the time of your admission. I know that GW has a website called the Office of Graduate Student Assistantships and Fellowships, which basically just collates a bunch of national fellowships and awards that you'd have to apply to separately. So there are definitely alternative scholarship opportunities out there, but it's going to take a little bit of extra time to research those opportunities and apply. But yeah, and in short, you can definitely be considered for other opportunities in addition to the Global Leaders Fellowship. Okay. So the next question asks, how is the IELTS or TOEFL waived? For Pakistan, it's not waived, because I don't think it's on one of the country. I'll have to double check that. But generally, there's really no possibility, if it's required, that it could be waived. I know, like for the GRE, that can be waived if you already have a JD, MD, or if you've already done a PhD program. But generally, if a TOEFL or IELTS is required, it really can't be waived. I will double check on that. I'll email you if I'm wrong about that. But on our website, I'm sorry, I'm about to sneeze. On the International Application Requirements website, for CCAS, you'll see the different exceptions for when IELTS or TOEFL can be waived. And for certain countries, it can be waived. Like I know for Nigeria and Ghana, it is waived because for a few reasons there, but I know for Pakistan and I know for India, it's still required. Let's see, I think one more question is coming in. Okay, so for PhD admission, some courses are prerequisites like math and physics, but they don't have them in previous education. Now, what can you do? Well, first, check and see on the program requirements if there are courses listed as prerequisite requirements, because there might not be any prerequisite requirements for specific courses. Again, that speaks to, you just have to really make sure that you're looking at the exact program that you're interested in. But if you've verified that you definitely need some prerequisite courses that you don't have, I would reach out to the department and see, if there are ways. I mean, they might just tell you that you need to enroll in those courses and then, and take them, right? So that's something that you could maybe do over the summer. They might say that, you can take some courses over for with free academies like Khan Academy or something like that, and that would count. I don't want to speak for any specific programs. That's why I'm saying you should really touch base with the department. But it's often the case where, yes, you would have to take those courses maybe over the summer or, as you prepare to apply. Okay, the next question asks, they say, thank you for this informative seminar, so you're welcome. I want to ask, how can we improve our chances for admission and scholarship if we have a low GPA? Okay, so some things can outweigh a low GPA. So if you're submitting GRE scores, then good GRE scores or GMAT scores, whatever you're submitting, can help that. Strong letters of recommendation and a strong statement of purpose, right? So everything else should be pretty top notch then. But specifically, I would say the GRE scores, and if the GRE is not required for that program, you might want to consider still taking the GRE and seeing how you do. And if you do score well high, then it's gonna look good for you to submit those scores. And that's something I didn't mention before. If a program doesn't require the GRE, you're still welcome to submit the scores as a supplemental application component, if you think that your GRE scores are well. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's kind of the tip for a low GPA. Also, what I would say is if you have a concern about anything in your application, you can briefly address it in the statement of purpose. I wouldn't take too long, or I wouldn't write too many sentences, maybe just 2 to 3 sentences about it. But maybe there is a reason for having a few bad grades one semester, and you'd like to take some time to explain that. So you can definitely do that. I just wouldn't focus on it too much, just briefly address it. How much bank statement is required for the F1 visa? So one thing to note is you actually don't have to submit any kind of visa or I-20 documents for the application process. So that all comes actually after you've been admitted and once you commit. So I don't know if that helps. You don't have to worry about it now, but generally, if you are going to have be sponsored like from your parents or something, they would only need to show the first years of expenses. And those expenses do include both tuition and living expenses. So we actually have a visa request form online that you can see how much is required. I think now it's like close to 60,000 or something for the first year if you're going to be sponsored by your parents. But again, you really don't have to worry about that until after you've been admitted. And I think that's probably the case for many US schools. Okay, what is a decent enough GPA when applying? I will say for GW, for all of the schools in GW and likely for schools in the US, we really do look for a 3.0 or higher. So, and that's a 3.0 out of 4.0. So whatever the conversion is there, which is like an average, a B average, I guess you can say. But again, things can kind of help your GPA if it's on the lower side too. Yeah, I'd say just a rule of thumb, 3.0 or higher. Let's see. Any other questions? Nope. All right, well, like I said, feel free to stay in touch with me. I definitely want to hear from you, and I see someone has raised their hand. 1 second. Okay, I'll try to allow you to talk. Let's see if that works. Or okay, whoever raised their hand, Mizumil, I think I allowed you to unmute your microphone if you would like to talk, or you can type in your question, either one. Next question that I see, let's see. Yeah, if the GPA is below 3.0, then again, that's really where I would focus on having really strong letters of recommendation and GRE scores, and maybe referencing that in your statement of purpose, maybe what happened that certain semester where you earned those bad grades. You can even take courses, in the summertime. Like I said, we do need all transcripts. So when we get all those transcripts, we'll see all of the grades that you've earned, not just on your main GPA. So those are just a few tips. If you feel that insecure about it, you can definitely reach out to the department and just see if they have any other tips as well. If you email our team, we can tell you about like what the average GPA is for certain programs. And many US schools will have those statistics about sort of what the average accepted student looks like. So feel free to do that sort of offline, just to give you an idea. And then the next question asks, if GPA is below 3.0, can a good work experience help? Yeah, I think it can help. It might depend on the field a little bit, and like what kind of work is it? Is it like academic, like research work, or is it just regular work? Or, maybe if you're applying to a business school, that can definitely help. So I think it just kind of depends. But yeah, everything helps is kind of what I'm getting at. And then whoever, let's see. Okay, so I don't have a WhatsApp number, but I did leave my email there, gradccas@gwu.edu. So you can definitely contact me there. I'm checking it mostly every day. Yeah. And like I said, this is recorded too. If you'd like to have the recording, I'm happy to share that with you as well. And guys, just remember that you get an application fee waiver if you apply to a CCS master's program, since you'd be eligible for the Global Leaders Fellowship. So, you might as well just apply while you're applying to other schools as well. Okay, well, I think we are at time for the session. So I just want to take a moment to thank you all for attending. And please do stay in touch with me. Yeah, and last question is how to get the recording. So just email me at gradccas@gwu. Here, I'll put it in the chat actually. Sorry. Yeah, gradccas@gwu.edu. That is my email. I can send you the recording if you email me. All right. With that, I want to wish you all enjoy the rest of your evening, I think it is. And I will talk to you at a later time. So take care and we'll see you later. Bye, everyone.